G'day and welcome back to Unimig. The first thing that we're going to cover today is how to navigate the digital screen on this machine. It isn't a touchscreen, so everything is done via the scroll knob or the push buttons. The main control knob is used to scroll through the menu options, or if a menu item has been selected, to adjust the item values. Press it to confirm actions and parameters, as well as swap between weld cycle parameters. The left action button can be pressed to select the menu option in the bottom left of the screen, or held down for 3 seconds to select the upper left menu option. Depending on the screen or weld type you're in, these menu options can change, but the selection of the item remains the same. The right action button works in the same way. A single press will select the bottom right menu option, while holding it down for 3 seconds will select the top right menu option. You'll find the settings menu on the home screen. Here you'll find all the standard machine settings, including brightness, beeper, unit of measurement, information and program update. The general settings are also where you'll find the current limit, which is what will allow you to swap between a 10 amp and 15 amp power supply. Make sure that when you are in the 15 amp mode, you have disconnected the 15 to 10 amp conversion lead. Your current limit must match the plug you're using. You'll also find the factory reset setting here. If you need to restore the machine to factory settings, select this option. You'll be prompted to confirm whether you'd like to proceed. To swap between general and machine settings, press the right action button. Under machine settings, you'll find the fan, wireless foot control, remote control, and wire pedal. The fan setting will allow you to choose between normal and smart fan modes. Normal mode means that the fan will run constantly. Smart mode means that the fan will only run when the machine requires cooling. The machine comes set to smart mode by default. This is where you can connect your wireless foot control. To connect it, turn the control on and then press down on the foot control pedal. The remote control setting can be turned on or off for amperage control via the torch and wired or wireless foot control rather than the machine. The first weld mode on the home screen is the MIG Smart Set, which is a synergic MIG mode. While hovering over this mode, you'll have the option to gas test and wire feed at the top of the screen. Holding the left and right buttons for 3 seconds respectively will activate these. At the bottom of the screen, you'll find the option to open the weld settings immediately on the left side. Press the left button to access this. When you select the Smart Set MIG, you'll be prompted to select a few of the initial weld parameters in order to load up the right synergic settings. First, you'll need to select the type of joint you're welding, from butt joint, fillet joint, or lap joint. Second, you'll select the type of metal that you're welding with, whether it's mild steel, flux core, stainless, or aluminium. And next, you'll choose the gas you're using. The option you'll be able to select will vary depending on the type of wire that you've selected. For example, if you're using mild steel wire, you'll be able to pick from 80-20, argon, CO2, or a 5-2 argon CO2 oxygen mix. In comparison, if you were using aluminium wire, your only choice would be to use pure argon. Finally, you'll need to select the wire diameter. Like with the gas, the type of wire that you've selected will dictate the wire diameters available to choose from. If you're using mild steel, you'll be able to pick from 0.6, 0.8 or 0.9. If you've got aluminium wire, you'll have the options of 1mm or 1.2. Once you've selected all your parameters, you'll be asked if you'd like to continue to the welding screen. Press the main knob to confirm. The confirmation screen also displays the correct polarity setup for the torch and earth clamp at the bottom. After you've confirmed your parameters, the machine will take you to the standard settings screen. It provides a readout of the parameters that you have selected. You'll be able to adjust the current, the wire speed, voltage, thickness, trigger mode, and inductance. The current, the wire speed, and thickness are 3 separate settings that you can adjust individually. However, adjusting one will automatically adjust the other 2, and will also adjust the voltage to match. Each of these settings is dependent on the others. For example, turning your current up signals that your material is thicker, so the thickness will increase with the increase in the current. All 3 of these automatically adjust the other 2 because it's synergic. Increasing your current tells the machine that the material is thick and vice versa. The voltage will also increase or decrease automatically if the current, wire speed or thickness is adjusted. However, unlike the other 3, if you want to change the value of the voltage itself, it will swap from voltage to voltage correction and can only be increased up to 9.9 and down to -9.9. If you add a voltage correction to your settings, this will remain if you then go back and adjust the current, thickness, etc. So if your voltage is 20, with a correction of -2, the -2 will remain even if you change your current and the voltage increases to 22. There are 5 trigger modes, also known as torch modes. 2T, S2T, 4T, S4T and Spot. 2T, which stands for 2-touch, means that you'll need to hold the trigger down on the MIG torch while you weld. Releasing it will stop the weld. In S2T, the torch trigger works the same way, but it includes some added special features. 4T or 4-touch means that you can click the trigger to start the weld, and then the torch will continue to weld until you click it again to turn it off. 4T is great for long welds where your finger fatigue can become a problem. In S4T, the torch trigger works the same way, but it includes some added special features. Spot mode will produce a series of consecutive and evenly timed arcs, perfect for even tacks and small welds. When in spot mode, you can select how long you want the arc to be on for. When the trigger is pressed, the torch will only weld for the set amount of time. The last standard setting is the inductance setting. This determines how long it takes for the current to rise to the set amperage and can be adjusted up to 10 or down to -10. The inductance gives you more control over your arc characteristics. If you minus the inductance, you'll get a hard, narrow weld pool that freezes quickly. If you increase the inductance, you'll get a soft, fluid-like weld pool that wets into the toes as well. The trigger mode that you have set your machine to will dictate which advanced settings you'll be able to adjust. From the standard settings, click the right action button to access the advanced settings. In 2T and 4T trigger modes, you'll have the following settings: pre-flow, creep start, welding amps, burn back and post-flow. The pre-flow, which determines how long the gas will flow over the weld before the arc ignites, can be adjusted between 0 seconds and 20 seconds. The creep start setting, which slows the wire feed on ignition for smoother weld starts on high wire speeds, can be set between 0 and 5 seconds. The welding amp is the same as the current, which was set in the standard settings. The burn back setting, which adjusts how far the wire will burn back when the trigger is released, can be set between 0 and 10. By turning the burn back up, the stick out when the trigger is released will be shorter, while turning it down will make it longer. The post-flow, which determines how long the gas will flow over the weld after the arc ends, can be adjusted between 0 seconds and 20 seconds. In S2T trigger mode, you'll get all the 2T settings, plus you can access the special features as well, like arc start and arc end. The arc start provides an initial burst of current, improving the arc ignition, and works in the same way that other hot starts or cold starts settings do. The arc start percentage, which adjusts how hot or how cold the arc starts, can be turned down to 1% of the set current for a very cold start and up to 200% for a very hot start. The arc start time lets you set how long you want your arc start percentage to last for, from 0 seconds or not at all up to 20 seconds. The arc end percentage lets you choose how hot or how cold you want your weld to finish. It can be adjusted between 1% of the set current up to 200%. Arc end is the equivalent of crater fill. The arc end time lets you set how long you want your arc end percentage to last, from 0 seconds or not at all up to 20 seconds. In S4T trigger mode, you'll have the same settings as 4T, as well as arc start percentage and arc end percentage. However, there'll be no option to adjust how long the arc starts and end lasts. This is because these times are instead dictated by how long the trigger is pressed before being released by the operator. In the spot trigger mode, you'll have the same settings as 2T and 4T, but you'll also have the spot specific settings, spot timer and spot pause timer. The spot timer lets you set how long the spot function will run between 0.5 seconds and 20 seconds. The spot pause timer lets you set the length of time the spot function is paused between welds. It can be set from 0.5 seconds up to 20 seconds. The second weld mode on the home screen is MIG manual mode. While hovering over this mode, you'll also have the option to gas test and wire feed at the top of the screen. From the MIG manual settings screen, you'll be able to adjust the wire speed, the voltage, torch, trigger mode, and inductance. In manual MIG, the wire speed and voltage are adjusted the same way as any other MIG machine. Simply turn the main knob in order to set them where you want them. The torch settings lets you select whether you have a standard MIG torch or a spool gun connected to the machine. The spool gun connects to the pinout on the front of the machine. When in manual mode, you'll only have 3 trigger modes to choose from: 2T, 4T and spot modes. The inductance setting works in the same way on manual MIG as it does on Smart Set TIG. The MIG manual advanced settings are the same as the MIG Smart Set, so check out our previous section on the full rundown. However, you won't have the special advanced settings available in the manual mode, as the trigger mode needed only works when in synergic mode. The third weld mode on the home screen is the TIG Smart Set, which is the synergic TIG mode. When hovering over this option, the machine will display correct polarity positions for the torch and the earth clamp along the bottom. When you select the Smart Set TIG, you'll be prompted to select a few initial weld parameters in order to load up the right synergic settings. First, you'll need to choose a material from the mild steel, stainless steel or aluminium. Next, you'll need to select the joint type from butt joint, fillet joint and lap joint. Third is the diameter setting, which refers to the diameter of the tungsten. And you have the choice between 1.6, 2.4 and 3.2 tungstens. The next parameter is your plate thickness. Depending on the tungsten size that you have selected, the thicknesses that you have to choose from will vary. For example, if you've selected aluminium and are using a 2.4mm tungsten, your thickness choices range from 2mm up to 6mm plate. The final parameter is the gas, and because it's TIG welding, regardless of what else you've picked, the only option is pure argon. After you've confirmed your parameters, the machine will take you to the standard settings screen. This provides a readout of the parameters that you have selected and the recommended gas flow. You'll be able to adjust the current, the trigger mode, waveform and pulse. The current setting is where you'll adjust your amperage. It will come preset at the recommended amount of amps, but it can be adjusted as needed. There are 4 trigger modes, also known as torch modes: 2T, 4T, HCT and Spot. 2T, which stands for 2 touch, means that you'll need to hold down the trigger on the torch while you weld. Releasing it will stop the weld. 4T or 4 touch means that you can click the trigger to start the weld, and the torch will continue to weld until you click it again to turn it off. 4T is great for long welds where your finger fatigue can become a problem. HCT stands for heat control trigger, lets you set the base current that you can switch to at any time during the weld by pressing the trigger button. While welding, push the torch trigger to switch to the HC base amps. To end the weld, hold the torch trigger. HCT mode is great for manual heat input control in the weld. It works like a manual pulse mode. Spot mode will produce a series of consecutive and evenly timed arcs, perfect for even tacks and small welds. When in spot mode, you can select how long you want the arc to be on. When the trigger is pressed, the torch will only weld for the set amount of time. There are 10 waveforms that you can choose from: DC, square, sine, triangular, square sine, square triangular, sine square, sine triangular, triangular square, and triangular sine. Your waveform must be set on DC in order to do a DC weld, regardless of material that you have chosen in the weld parameters. If it is in any of the other waveforms, all of which are AC, the machine will AC weld even on mild steel. The pulse setting turns the pulse mode on or off. The trigger mode waveforms and pulse mode that you set your machine to will dictate which advanced settings you'll be able to adjust. From the standard settings, click the right action button to select the advanced settings. In DC, which is 2T, 4T trigger mode, DC waveform and pulse off, you'll have the following settings: pre-flow, start amp, upslope, peak amp, downslope, end amp, post-flow, spot plus, arc plus and tack plus. The pre-flow, which determines how long the gas will flow over a weld before the arc ignites, can be adjusted between 0 seconds and 20 seconds. The start amp, which determines how hot or cold the weld will start, can be adjusted between 10 amps and 230 amps. The upslope, which determines how long it takes the start amp to reach the peak amp, can be set from 0 seconds or instantaneously up to 20 seconds. The peak amp, which is the current the weld will be done at, can be adjusted between 10 amps and 230 amps. The downslope, which determines how long it takes for the peak amp to reach the end amp, can be adjusted from 0 seconds or instantaneously up to 20 seconds. The end amp, which determines how hot or cold the weld will finish, can be adjusted between 10 amps and 230 amps. The post flow, which determines how long the gas will flow over the weld after the arc ends, can be adjusted between 0 seconds and 20 seconds. The Spot Plus program improves your spot welding by applying an adjustable synergic pulse program. The program speeds up the spot tacking process and is perfect for sheet metal fit-ups with gaps. The Arc Plus program keeps the volt amps constant by adjusting the welding current proportionately as the arc voltage increases or decreases during a weld. It helps give better puddle control when weaving, reducing heat input and increased sidewall fusion. The Tack Plus program allows you to preset the tacking procedure to reduce the time required for tack welding, and also reduces the heat input in the joint between tacks, improving the quality. In AC, which is 2T/4T trigger modes, any of the AC waveforms and pulse off, you'll have some of the same settings in DC with pre-flow, start amps, upslope, peak amp, downslope, end amp and post-flow. You'll also have the following AC specific settings: balance, AC frequency, mixed AC DC percentage, fusion plus and diameter. The balance is how much time is spent in the negative and positive parts of the AC cycle. The balance is automatically calculated on the machine, but it can be manually adjusted up or down by 5% of that calculated amount for more or less cleaning or penetration. The AC frequency determines how many AC cycles are completed in a second. The AC frequency can be adjusted from 50 Hz up to 250 Hz per second. Mixed AC DC welding is the combination of TIG AC and TIG DC negative in one weld. The mixed AC DC percentage determines how much of the mix is AC and how much is DC negative. It can be adjusted from 0% up to 80%, giving you none up to the majority of AC in the mix. The Fusion Plus program is an advanced AC TIG feature that provides greater arc focus at high welding speeds and provides deep penetration even at low AC frequencies. The diameter setting works to optimize the arc ignition while in AC based on a selected tungsten diameter. You can choose 1, 1.6, 2, 2.4, 3.2 and 4mm tungstens. In DC Pulse, which is 2T/4T trigger mode, DC waveform and pulse on, you'll have some of the standard DC settings including pre-flow, start amp, upslope, peak amp, downslope, end amp and post-flow. You'll also have a few pulse settings including base amp, pulse width and frequency. The base amp, which determines what the base current of the pulse cycle will be, can be set between 10 amps and 230 amps. The closer your base amps are to your peak amps, the hotter the weld will be. The pulse width, which determines how much of the pulse cycle is spent in the peak amps, can be adjusted from 5% or almost no peak amps up to 95% or almost completely peak amps. The frequency is how many times the pulse cycle of the peak and base amps is completed and can be set between 0.5 Hz and 999 Hz. When this is set to 0.5 Hz, it will take 2 seconds to complete a full cycle. If this is set to 999 Hz, then the pulse cycle will be completed 999 times in 1 second. In AC Pulse, which is 2T/4T trigger mode, any of the AC waveforms and pulse on, you'll have some of the same settings as in DC and DC Pulse, with pre-flow, start amp, upslope, peak amp, downslope, end amp and post-flow. You'll also have the AC and pulse specific settings, such as base amp, pulse width, frequency, balance, AC frequency and diameter. In DC Spot, which is spot trigger mode, DC waveforms pulse off, you will have some of the standard DC settings like pre-flow, peak amp, downslope, end amp, post-flow and Arc Plus. You'll also have the spot mode setting spot time. The spot time lets you set how long the spot function will run for, between 0.1 seconds and 10 seconds. In AC Spot, which is spot trigger mode, any of the AC waveforms and pulse off, you'll have some of the standard AC settings like pre-flow, peak amp, downslope, end amp, post-flow, balance, AC frequency and diameter. You will also have the spot mode setting spot time. In DC, which is HCT trigger mode, DC waveform and pulse off, you will have the following regular DC settings: pre-flow, start amp, upslope, peak amp, downslope, end amp and post-flow. You will then also have the HCT specific setting HC base amp. Like the pulse base amp, the HC base amp determines what the base current will be when the torch trigger is pressed while in this mode. It can be set between 10 amps and 230 amps. In AC, which is HCT trigger mode, any of the AC waveforms and pulse off, you'll have the following regular AC settings: pre-flow, start amp, upslope, peak amp, downslope, end amp, post flow, balance, AC frequency and diameter. You will then also have the HCT specific settings, HC base amp. The fourth weld mode on the home screen is the high frequency TIG, which is manual TIG mode. High frequency start allows you to initiate the arc by pressing the torch button or by using a foot pedal. When hovering over this option, the machine will display the correct polarity positions for the torch and earth clamp along the bottom. The standard and advanced settings are the same in HF TIG as they are in Smart Set, so for a full walkthrough of the settings, check out our previous section. The fifth weld mode on the home screen is the lift arc TIG, which is another manual TIG mode. A lift arc start requires touching the tungsten to the workpiece and lifting the torch off to initiate the arc. When hovering over this option, the machine will display the correct polarity positions for the torch and the earth clamp along the bottom. The standard and advanced settings are the same in lift TIG as they are in Smart Set. Check out that section for a complete rundown of all the settings. The sixth and last weld mode on the home screen is MMA or stick mode. From the MMA settings screen, you'll be able to adjust the current, the pulse and the waveform. The current setting is a standard amperage selection and you can adjust it up or down between 10 and 200 amps to suit the electrode that you're using. The pulse setting turns the pulse mode on or off. The pulse mode when stick welding helps to reduce spatter, improves heat control and makes slag removal easier. It also improves the speed and efficiency of vertical up welds, eliminating the need for weaving whilst maintaining a good root fusion. The waveform setting lets you swap between a DC and AC wave, so you can still AC and DC weld in stick. The waveform and pulse mode that you have set on your machine will dictate the advanced settings that you'll be able to adjust. From the standard settings, click on the right action button to access the advanced settings. In DC or AC with no pulse, you'll have the following settings: hot start time, welding amp and arc force. The hot start provides an initial burst of current, improving the arc ignition and reducing the chance of sticking. It can be adjusted from 0% or none at all, up to 100% of the set current for a very hot start. The hot start time lets you set how long you want your hot start to last for, from 0.5 seconds up to 5 seconds. The welding amp will read out the same number as the current which was set in standard settings. The arc force helps to keep the arc stabilised during the weld by detecting any short circuits and increasing the peak current to prevent the arc from cutting out or the electrode from sticking. It can be adjusted from 0 to 100. When in DC or AC with the pulse turned on, you'll have the hot start settings as well as peak amp, base amp, frequency and pulse width. The peak amp, which is the current that the weld will be done on, can be adjusted between 10 amps and 200 amps. The base amp, which determines the base current of the pulse cycle will be, can be set between 10 amps and 200 amps. The closer your base amps are to your peak amps, the hotter the weld will be. The frequency determines how many times the pulse cycle of peak and base amps is completed per second and can be set between 0.5 Hz to 400 Hz. When this is set to 0.5 Hz, it'll take 2 seconds to complete a full cycle. When it's set to 400 Hz, then the pulse cycle will be completed in 400 times in 1 second. The pulse width, which determines how much of the pulse cycle is spent in the peak amps, can be adjusted from 5% or almost no peak amps up to 95% or almost completely peak amps. Thanks for watching the complete rundown on our Razor 230 4-in-1 AC DC, and we'll see you next time.